Have you ever found yourself scrolling through an online marketplace late at night, only to stumble upon something so bizarre, so utterly inexplicable, that you couldn't help but wonder who on earth would actually buy this and why? Welcome to the wonderfully strange world of American consumerism, a landscape where logic sometimes takes a backseat and imagination drives the cart straight into uncharted territory. From the downright peculiar to the outright unbelievable, the history of American spending is filled with purchases that seem to defy all reason. They make you laugh, scratch your head, and question everything you thought you knew about what people truly want or think they need. We live in a country where creativity meets commerce in the most unexpected ways. It's a place where someone, somewhere, decided that yes, a life-sized garden gnome modeled after a celebrity was absolutely essential. Or that a custom-built miniature castle for their pet hamster was worth every penny. These purchases aren't just odd, they're fascinating glimpses into the human spirit. They tell stories of whimsy, ambition, and sometimes sheer bafflement. And behind every one of these bizarre buys is a person who looked at conventional logic, smiled, and decided to take a detour. Today, we're setting off on a journey through 33 of the weirdest American purchases ever made. We'll explore items that range from curiously charming to utterly bewildering, each one a testament to the wild and wonderful diversity of human desire. This isn't just a list, it's an invitation to step into a world where the ordinary is left behind and the extraordinary takes center stage. So settle in, open your mind, and get ready to discover the purchases that defy all logic, spark your curiosity, and just might make you see the art of buying and being sold in a whole new light. Our journey into the bizarre begins not with something complex or high-tech, but with perhaps the simplest product ever sold, a rock. In 1975, a California advertising executive named Gary Dahl was having drinks with his friends, listening to them complain about the hassles of owning a pet. The feeding, the vet bills, the walks in the rain. As a joke, Dahl pitched the perfect alternative, a pet that required no such effort, a pet rock. His friends laughed, but Dahl, sensing a kernel of pure marketing genius, decided to actually do it. He went to a building supply store, bought a bunch of smooth, ordinary stones from Mexico, and packaged each one in a custom cardboard box complete with air holes because, of course, even a joke needs commitment. But the true stroke of brilliance was the included official training manual, a 32-page booklet filled with hilarious, deadpan instructions on how to care for your new mineral companion. It covered everything from housebreaking, don't, to teaching it tricks like play dead and roll over. The entire concept was a masterclass in selling an idea, not an object. For just $3.95, you weren't buying a rock. You were buying a sense of humor, a piece of a shared cultural joke, a conversation starter for your coffee table. No one needed a pet rock, but in the social climate of the mid-1970s, a whole lot of people wanted one. It was an era ripe for a bit of light-hearted, absurdist relief, and Dahl's creation exploded into a full-blown national craze. He appeared on The Tonight Show, articles were written in major newspapers, and incredibly, he sold over 1 million pet rocks in just a few months, making Gary Dahl an instant millionaire. The pet rock phenomenon stands as a towering monument in the history of weird purchases because it proves a fundamental truth about consumerism. Sometimes the value isn't in the product's function, but in the story it tells and the feeling it gives you. It was the ultimate triumph of marketing over material, a perfect, timeless example of how Americans are willing to open their wallets not for utility, but for a wonderfully clever piece of nonsense. If the pet rock was a clever, mass-marketed joke, our next purchase proves that when it comes to true obsession, no price is too high for a piece of someone else's fame, even if that piece is quite literally a piece of garbage. In 2012, the online marketplace eBay played host to one of the most surreal auctions in its history. The item up for bid wasn't a rare collectible or a piece of memorabilia. It was a used, dried-out piece of bubblegum once chewed by pop icon Britney Spears. The story goes that the seller was a maintenance worker at a concert venue where Spears had performed. While cleaning up after the show, they allegedly discovered the discarded gum stuck to the stage or a railing and saw not a sticky piece of trash but a potential gold mine. They carefully preserved it, listed it online with a starting bid of just a few dollars, and then watched in astonishment as a bidding war erupted among devoted fans. When the digital gavel finally fell, that piece of chewed-up sugar and latex had sold for $14,500. This transaction is so bizarre because it inverts every normal principle of value. We typically assign worth to objects based on their utility, their rarity, or their beauty. A used piece of gum has none of these qualities. Its utility is exhausted, it's horrifically common, and after being chewed and discarded, it's objectively gross. So why would anyone pay such an astronomical sum for it? The answer lies deep in the psychology of parasocial relationships and extreme fandom. For the winning bidder, this wasn't just gum. It was a physical, tangible connection to the celebrity they idolized. In a strange way, it represented the ultimate intimacy, something that was actually inside Britney Spears' mouth, a part of her world, however fleeting and insignificant it may seem to an outsider. This desire to own a fragment of a celebrity's existence drives a whole market for the utterly bizarre, from locks of hair and fingernail clippings to hotel bedsheets and, yes, discarded chewing gum. It's a modern form of relic veneration where the object is believed to be imbued with the essence of the famous person. The purchase is less about the object itself and more about the story it represents and the status it confers within a specific community of fans. Owning such a thing is the ultimate bragging right, a testament to one's dedication and financial commitment to their fandom. While most of us would see a biohazard, the buyer saw a sacred artifact, proving that in the strange economy of celebrity worship, value is truly in the eye of the beholder, and sometimes that eye is fixed on a piece of used gum. After the spectacle of celebrity gum, you might think the limits of what people will buy have been thoroughly tested, but the American marketplace always finds a way to push further into the extraordinary. Consider this: if someone can sell a rock as a pet and used gum as a relic, what's to stop someone from selling absolutely nothing at all? Or more accurately, selling the idea of something that may not even exist. This brings us to one of the most brilliantly creative and utterly baffling sales in internet history: the ghost trapped in a jar. In 2003, an eBay user named Sean placed an auction for a simple canning jar, the kind you might use for pickles or jam. But this was no ordinary container. According to the listing, it held a fully intact and very haunted spirit. The seller crafted an incredibly detailed and eerily persuasive description, claiming the ghost was a long-dead 18-year-old man who had been captured using a complex ritual involving incense, candles, and a great deal of courage. The auction page warned potential buyers of the jar's strange effects, mysterious cold drafts, feelings of being watched, and even the apparition of a young man appearing in photographs. The starting bid was a mere $10, but what happened next was pure internet magic. Driven by a mix of curiosity, belief, and the sheer entertainment value of it all, bids began to skyrocket. The auction became a viral sensation, drawing attention from major news outlets and paranormal enthusiasts worldwide. When the final bid was placed, the ghost in a jar had sold for an astounding $55,800. Now, the immediate question is, why? Who would spend such an enormous sum on what is, by any rational measure, an empty jar? The motives are as fascinating as the sale itself. For some, it was likely a high-stakes investment in a unique conversation piece, a centerpiece for a collection of the strange and unusual. For others, it might have been a genuine belief in the paranormal and the desire to own a verified haunted object, a tangible connection to the other side. But perhaps the most compelling reason is the story. The buyer wasn't just purchasing glass and air, they were purchasing an entire narrative, a beautifully crafted piece of folklore with their name now written into it. They became the owner of a legend, the protagonist in the next chapter of the ghost story. This sale perfectly illustrates a burgeoning market for the intangible and the paranormal. Online platforms are now filled with listings for haunted dolls, cursed artifacts, and even captured shadows. These items have no objective function or traditional value. Their worth is generated entirely by the mythos surrounding them and the emotions they provoke. It's a market driven by our timeless fascination with the unknown and our deep-seated love for a good story. The ghost in a jar stands as a testament to the power of narrative in commerce. It proves that with enough creativity, you can sell not just a product but an experience, a mystery, and a dream. And that for the right story, there will always be an audience willing to pay an unbelievable price to make it a part of their reality. Moving from the ethereal to the earthly, our next purchase proves that even the most mundane objects can be transformed into priceless artifacts when touched by the hand of a legend. In the world of bizarre memorabilia, few items are as strangely intimate and yet as utterly ordinary as a single French fry. But this wasn't just any potato sliver. This one was reportedly part of the final meal of the king of rock and roll himself, Elvis Presley. The story goes that after Elvis passed away on August 16, 1977, a member of the household staff allegedly gathered a few untouched items from his plate, preserving them as a somber memento of that fateful day. Decades later, this singular, uneaten fry found its way to an auction block, where it was presented not as a piece of food, but as a sacred relic from the last hours of a cultural icon. When the bidding concluded, this piece of potato, likely cold and brittle from years of storage, sold for an eye-watering sum. While reports vary, some accounts suggest it fetched well over $2,000, a staggering price for a commodity that normally costs pennies. This transaction forces us to confront the macabre side of celebrity worship. There's a profound and unsettling intimacy in owning a piece of someone's final moments. The buyer isn't just acquiring a French fry, they are purchasing a tangible connection to the endpoint of a legendary life, a silent witness to the last ordinary actions of an extraordinary person. It's an object that represents the ultimate. What if a fragment of the last meal he ever tasted, a mundane detail that became historically significant through tragic circumstance? This desire to own a piece of mortality isn't new. It echoes the Victorian era's fascination with memento mori, objects kept to remember the dead. In the modern context, however, it's driven by an intense parasocial relationship where fans feel they truly knew the celebrity, and possessing such an item is a way to close a personal loop to feel closer to the story's end. The market for this type of memorabilia is a fascinating and often grim economy, where value is dictated by a morbid calculus. Items associated with a celebrity's death often far exceed the value of items from their life. A contract signed by Marilyn Monroe might be valuable, but the utility bill from the month she died is considered more so because of its proximity to the tragedy. This single French fry sits at the extreme end of that spectrum, representing not just proximity but participation in those final hours. It's also a testament to the power of authentication in this bizarre marketplace. The fry's immense value is entirely dependent on the credibility of its provenance, the story that it truly came from that plate. Without that narrative, it is worthless. With it, it becomes a museum piece, a conversation starter that is simultaneously grotesque and enthralling. This purchase defies all practical logic, but it perfectly exemplifies the emotional logic of fandom, where the desire to own a physical piece of history, no matter how small or strange, can override all other considerations. If you thought a decades-old French fry was a strange thing to value, prepare yourself for a story that takes the concept of preserved fast food to an entirely new level of absurdity. In 1999, a man named David Whipple from Utah decided to conduct a little experiment. After buying a hamburger from McDonald's, he intentionally left it out on a shelf, not to eat, but simply to see what would happen. He wanted to test the urban legend that McDonald's food was so packed with preservatives that it would never actually decompose. He'd check on it from time to time, and to his amazement, months and then years went by, and the burger showed no signs of mold, no noticeable decay. It simply hardened into a seemingly permanent, leathery state. It became a curious family oddity, a conversation piece he'd bring out to show friends. Then, a full decade after his initial purchase, the era of online auctions was in full swing, and Whipple had a thought. He listed his 10-year-old McDonald's hamburger on eBay. The listing wasn't just for an old piece of food, it was for a piece of evidence, a physical testament to a long-held cultural belief about the indestructible nature of fast food. The bidding that followed was anything but predictable. Driven by a mix of macabre curiosity, a desire to own a famous urban legend, and the sheer viral spectacle of it all, the price began to climb. When the auction closed, this petrified patty and its shrunken bun had sold for an almost unbelievable $10,075. This purchase is fascinating because it's not really about the burger itself. Unlike the Elvis fry, which derived its value from a direct connection to a specific person and a specific moment in time, this burger's value was almost entirely intellectual. The buyer was purchasing a scientific, or perhaps anti-scientific, artifact. They were buying a trophy in the long-running cultural debate about the quality and composition of the food we consume. For some, it might have been a grotesque piece of proof to show their children, a tangible reason to avoid fast food. For others, it was a hilarious contrarian symbol, a burger so mighty it could defeat time itself. The sale tapped directly into the modern obsession with food authenticity and the fear of processed ingredients. We live in an age of organic markets and farm-to-table restaurants, and this desiccated hamburger stood as the perfect, stark opposite of that movement. It was the ultimate processed food, so processed that even nature's decomposers wanted nothing to do with it. The story of the $10,000 burger also forces us to question the very nature of value in a digital marketplace. Its worth was generated not by any inherent quality of the object, but by the narrative it supported and the attention it garnered. It was a piece of performance art sold at auction, a meme in physical form before the word meme was even widely used. The buyer wasn't just acquiring a burger, they were buying a stake in a story that would be told and retold, ensuring their name was forever linked to one of the internet's earliest and most deliciously weird viral sensations. It was a purchase that perfectly captured the early, Wild West spirit of eBay, a place where anything, no matter how bizarre, could find an audience and a price tag that defied all conventional logic. While a preserved burger might be a strange artifact and a celebrity's uneaten fry a morbid keepsake, our next purchase redefines the very scale of a bizarre acquisition. We're no longer talking about objects that fit in a jar or on a plate. We're talking about purchasing an entire slice of the map itself. In 2002, the online world watched in stunned disbelief as a listing appeared on eBay that was unlike any before it, the auction of an entire town. Not a model, not a namesake, but the actual incorporated community of Bridgeville, California. This wasn't a metaphorical sale, it was a literal transfer of ownership of 90 acres of land, complete with a post office, a bridge over the Van Dusen River, a handful of houses, and even a cemetery. The town had been privately owned for decades, and its elderly owner decided it was time to sell. Seeing the quirky, anything-goes spirit of the early internet, he bypassed traditional real estate channels and took the entire town to eBay. The bidding was as unpredictable as you might imagine, with the final price soaring to $1.78 million. The winner was an anonymous buyer from Southern California, who, with the click of a mouse, became the literal lord of a manor that contained an entire community. The logistics of such a purchase are a labyrinth of legal and practical oddities. Buying a town isn't like buying a house. It's a unique fusion of real estate acquisition and a corporate merger. The new owner didn't just get the land, they inherited the town's infrastructure, its roads, its water system, its light poles. They became the landlord for the few remaining residents, responsible for collecting rent and maintaining their properties. They also acquired a fascinating and somewhat daunting level of responsibility. Who fixes a pothole on the town's main street when you are the town? Who decides on zoning or land use? The buyer essentially stepped into the role of a miniature government, a benevolent dictator of their own tiny kingdom, with all the mundane administrative duties that title implies. The new owner had grand, romantic visions for Bridgeville. Initial plans talked about transforming it into an artist's colony or an eco-friendly retreat, a place where creativity and community could flourish under private stewardship. It was a modern attempt to create a personal utopia, a testament to the American desire to not just own property, but to build a legacy and control one's environment on a grand scale. However, the strange reality of owning a piece of incorporated America quickly set in. The romantic dream collided with the hard surfaces of bureaucracy and economics. Upgrading aging infrastructure like water and septic systems proved to be prohibitively expensive. Dealing with county regulations and building codes as a private town owner was a complex challenge that no one had really prepared for. The weight of being solely responsible for the well-being of a community, however small, turned out to be a massive burden rather than a whimsical adventure. Within just a few years, the dream began to fade. The owner, overwhelmed by the reality of their purchase, ultimately put Bridgeville back on the market where it would be sold again through more conventional means. The story of the eBay town is a profound lesson in the difference between the idea of ownership and its reality. It's one thing to own a curiosity, it's another entirely to own a functioning, however small, piece of society. This purchase represents the ultimate expression of American property ambition, pushing the concept of buying something to its absolute limit. It's a bizarre chapter in consumer history, not because of the object itself, but because of the sheer audacity of the transaction. A reminder that in America, if you can imagine owning it, from a pet rock to a ghost to an entire town, there's a marketplace willing to give you a price. After the saga of the eBay town, our tour of the unbelievable takes a turn from the municipal to the miraculous with a story that proves faith can be one of the most powerful market forces of all. In 2004, a Florida woman named Diana Dicer made a grilled cheese sandwich. It was, by all accounts, a perfectly ordinary snack until she took a bite and noticed something extraordinary. Staring back at her from the toasted surface of the bread was what she believed to be a clear image of the Virgin Mary. Rather than finishing her meal, she did something else entirely. She put the sandwich in a clear plastic container and stored it away in her closet. For 10 years it sat there, a silent, greasy relic waiting for its moment. A decade later, facing financial difficulties, Dicer decided to see if her divine discovery had any earthly value. She listed the decade-old sandwich on eBay with a starting bid of just $15. What happened next was nothing short of a modern-day miracle of commerce. The listing went viral, capturing the imagination of the internet and sparking a furious bidding war. When the auction closed, that singular 10-year-old grilled cheese sandwich had sold for $28,000. This purchase is a fascinating case study in the power of perception. The phenomenon at play is called pareidolia, a hardwired function of the human brain where we perceive familiar patterns like faces in random stimuli. We see a man in the moon, animals in the clouds, and yes, sometimes religious figures in our food. It's a completely natural psychological response, but in the context of faith, it can feel like something far more significant. For Diana Dicer and the thousands who followed her auction, the pattern on that sandwich wasn't a random burn mark. It was a sign, a message, a tangible piece of the divine that had inexplicably appeared in her kitchen. The buyer, a Canadian online casino, wasn't just purchasing a piece of stale bread, they were acquiring a potent symbol. Their stated intention was to tour the sandwich as a unique attraction, a blend of the sacred and the bizarre that would draw crowds and generate publicity. They understood that its value wasn't intrinsic, it was entirely symbolic, generated by the shared belief and curiosity surrounding it. This transaction sits at the busy intersection of faith, commerce, and pop culture. It represents the commercialization of religious iconography, where sacred symbols are stripped of their traditional context and repackaged for mass consumption. The sandwich became a commodity, its spiritual significance directly translated into a monetary one. This isn't a new concept. Relics have been bought and sold throughout history, but the platform of eBay and the mundanity of the object elevated it to a new level of absurdity. It sparked debates about blasphemy and belief, with critics dismissing it as a crass exploitation of faith and supporters defending it as a valid expression of personal spirituality. The grilled cheese sandwich ultimately became more than a snack or even a relic. It became a cultural Rorschach test. What you saw in it said less about the sandwich and more about you. Did you see a sign from God, a psychological trick, or a brilliantly successful marketing stunt? Its $28,000 price tag proves that in the marketplace of ideas, the value of a symbol is ultimately determined by how many people are willing to believe in it. If you thought a sacred sandwich was the peak of edible oddities, prepare for a purchase that takes the concept of celebrity leftovers to a chilling new level of absurdity. In 2011, at the height of Bieber fever, the pop sensation Justin Bieber stopped for a meal at a restaurant in New Jersey. After he left, an employee made a discovery that would soon set the internet ablaze. On the table, sitting half empty, was a glass of milk that the superstar had reportedly been drinking. Instead of washing it, the employee saw an opportunity, carefully preserving the glass and its cloudy contents. It was soon listed on eBay with a description that sent his legions of devoted fans into a frenzy. The auction title said it all: Justin Bieber's half-drank milk. The bidding exploded, driven by a level of fan devotion that can only be described as a cultural phenomenon. Offers poured in, climbing from a few dollars into the hundreds, then the thousands. When the final bid was placed, that used glass of dairy had sold for an unbelievable $1,900. This transaction is a perfect, if unsettling, case study in the extreme culture of modern fandom. Bieber fever wasn't just about liking a singer's music, it was an all-consuming, identity-forming passion for millions of mostly young fans. In this context, an object doesn't need intrinsic value. Its worth is measured solely by its proximity to the idol. A half-finished glass of milk becomes the ultimate trophy, a sacred relic of a shared moment, however imaginary. For the winning bidder, this wasn't a used beverage, it was a physical, tangible connection to Justin. It represented an almost romantic intimacy, something his lips had touched, something that was inside his body. In the strange logic of extreme fandom, owning this glass was the closest one could get to the star without actually meeting him. It's a powerful example of what sociologists call contagious magic. The belief that a person's essence can be transferred through their physical remains, be it a lock of hair, a piece of clothing, or in this case, their saliva. The market for such bizarre celebrity leftovers is both vast and deeply peculiar. Online auctions are filled with listings for items that would be considered trash in any other context. Used napkins, discarded water bottles, empty chip bags, all allegedly touched by a famous person. Their value is created entirely by the narrative of authenticity and the desperate desire of fans to own a piece of the narrative. This market thrives because it offers something that official merchandise cannot: the illusion of a genuine, unscripted, and personal connection. A concert tea is mass-produced. This glass of milk was uniquely his. the purchase also highlights a darker side of this dynamic, the exploitation of access. Restaurant employees, hotel staff, and cleanup crews are often the ones who profit from the sale of these intimate discards, creating a gray market built on celebrity proximity without their consent. It raises ethical questions about the boundaries of fandom and the right to privacy, even when it comes to something as simple as a leftover drink. The sale of Justin Bieber's milk stands as a stark monument to the power of celebrity in the 21st century, proving that in the eyes of a devoted fan, no connection is too strange and no price is too high for a taste of someone else's life. But perhaps no object better captures this unsettling blend of childhood innocence and supernatural menace than our next purchase, a story that begins not on an auction site, but in the elegant, sun-drenched corridors of a Key West mansion at the turn of the 20th century. The artist Robert Eugene Otto received a curious gift as a young boy, a large handcrafted doll fashioned to look like a young sailor, complete with a miniature uniform. The boy, who went by Gene, named the doll Robert, and from the very beginning the relationship was unusual. Gene's parents would often hear him upstairs in his room having elaborate, animated conversations. But they weren't one-sided. They swore they heard two distinct voices answering each other. Furniture would be found overturned, and Gene himself would often blame the doll for any mischief, insisting with the unwavering conviction of a child that Robert did it. The stories only grew more sinister as time went on. Visitors to the home reported seeing the doll move from window to window when no one was in the room. Others claimed its facial expression would change from a placid smile to a contortion of pure rage. Robert the doll developed a reputation that far outgrew his stuffed body and glass eyes, becoming a permanent, terrifying fixture in Key West folklore. Decades later, long after Gene Otto had passed away, the doll, along with its terrifying legend, was acquired by the Fort East Martello Museum in Key West. This is where Robert's story transforms from a local ghost tale into a truly bizarre chapter of modern consumer culture. The museum itself did not purchase Robert. His acquisition was more of a custodianship. However, the public's relationship with him operates on a strange economy of belief and respect. Visitors don't buy Robert, but they participate in a ritual of purchase nonetheless, the purchase of peace. To this day, the museum receives thousands of letters and emails from people all over the world who have visited Robert, taken his photograph without asking permission, and subsequently experienced a run of devastating bad luck. They write to apologize, to beg his forgiveness, and to ask him to lift the curse. They often include offerings, toys, candy, coins as a form of payment to appease the angry spirit they believe resides within the doll. This creates a surreal feedback loop where the legend fuels itself. Every new report of misfortune adds another layer to Robert's fearsome mythology, making him more powerful and more valuable as a cultural artifact. Our fascination with objects like Robert the doll speaks to a deep, primal part of the human psyche. We are drawn to haunted items because they represent a tantalizing breach in the natural order, physical proof that there might be something beyond the world we can see and measure. They make the supernatural tangible. Owning or even interacting with such an object is a way to touch that mystery, to feel a thrilling shiver of fear that confirms our world is still full of wonder and danger. Furthermore, in a strange way, these cursed objects offer a form of narrative comfort. When life delivers a series of unexplainable tragedies, it can be easier to blame a supernatural curse from a disrespectful encounter with a doll than to accept the cruel randomness of fate. The curse provides a story, a reason, and a culprit for misfortune. Robert the doll, like the ghost in a jar, is a blank canvas onto which we project our deepest fears and our most superstitious instincts. He is a testament to the idea that the value of an object is never just in its materials or craftsmanship, but in the immense weight of the stories we attach to it. And in Robert's case, that story is one whispered in two voices, one belonging to a little boy, and the other, perhaps, to something much, much older. Just when you think the limits of bizarre spending have been reached, along comes a story that redefines extravagance on a truly spectacular scale. Imagine having a single, fleeting minute to capture the attention of the entire world. That's the power of a Super Bowl advertisement, a slice of airtime so coveted that in the year 2000, a 30-second spot could cost a company over $2 million. It's the ultimate stage for established giants like Coca-Cola and Budweiser to solidify their brand legacy. But in that same year, a virtually unknown startup named Pixelon managed to secure not just 30 seconds but a full minute of this priceless airtime. They paid a staggering $3.2 million for the privilege, launching what they promised would be a revolution in how we experience the internet. The only problem, the revolution was a complete mirage, and the company was built on a foundation of pure fiction, making this one of the most expensive and audacious flops in the entire history of American commerce. The ad itself was a spectacle worthy of the Super Bowl. It featured a dazzling array of celebrity power, with performances from legends like The Who, Kiss, Faith Hill, and the Dixie Chicks, all supposedly broadcast live over Pixelon's groundbreaking new technology. The company claimed to have invented a revolutionary video streaming platform that could deliver high-quality, full-screen video over the dial-up internet connections that were standard at the time. This was a promise that bordered on technological magic in an era defined by the painful screech of a modem and pixelated, buffering video no larger than a postage stamp. Pixelon wasn't just selling a product, they were selling a vision of the future, a promise to tear down the limitations of the slow, text-heavy internet and replace it with a vibrant, televised experience. The ad was a masterpiece of hype, designed to make viewers believe they were witnessing the dawn of a new digital age. But behind the glamorous facade was a reality so bizarre it feels like a Hollywood thriller. The charismatic founder and CEO of Pixelon, a man going by the name Michael Fenn, was actually a convicted felon named David Kim Stanley on the run from law enforcement in Virginia and Tennessee. He had changed his identity and, with a combination of sheer bravado and fabricated technical claims, managed to convince a group of investors to pour millions into his vaporware company. The revolutionary compression algorithm that was the heart of Pixelon's technology simply did not exist. The live performances in the Super Bowl ad were a complete sham. They had been pre-recorded weeks earlier at a lavish launch party that itself cost the company over $1.2 million. The entire operation was an elaborate Ponzi scheme, using new investor money to pay old investors and fund an unsustainable marketing blitz, all in the desperate hope that the reality of a working product would eventually catch up to the fantasy they were selling. The aftermath was a spectacular implosion. Immediately after the Super Bowl, millions of curious viewers flocked to the Pixelon website, eager to experience this new streaming wonder. What they found was a catastrophic failure. The site promptly crashed under the enormous traffic load, and those who did get through discovered a clunky, bug-ridden interface that offered only low-quality, stuttering video, a far cry from the seamless high-definition future that had been advertised. The jig was up almost instantly. The technological claims were debunked, the founder's true identity was uncovered, and the house of cards collapsed. Pixelon declared bankruptcy within a year, having burned through over $30 million of investor money without ever generating a viable product or a single dollar of real revenue. This purchase stands as a timeless cautionary tale about the intoxicating allure of hype and the dangerous gap between perception and reality, especially during the dot-com bubble when investors were frantic to find the next big thing. The $3 million Super Bowl ad was the ultimate symbol of this era's madness, a company with no product, built by a conman, buying the most expensive advertising real estate on the planet to sell a dream that was nothing but empty pixels on a screen. It wasn't just a bad business decision, it was a performance, a grand act of theatrical fraud played out for 100 million people. The ad itself became the product, a bizarre piece of history that is remembered not for what it sold, but for the breathtaking audacity of the attempt. It serves as a permanent reminder that a great story and a huge budget can capture the world's attention, but without a genuine product to back it up, all you're left with is a very expensive and very public lesson in failure. While the Pixelan saga was a masterclass in selling vaporware, sometimes the most incredible purchases aren't for a non-existent product, but for the very name of something yet to be built. In 2019, the digital real estate market witnessed one of its most staggering transactions ever, the sale of the domain name voice.com. The price, a cool $1.5 million. This wasn't the acquisition of a functioning business, a patented technology, or a physical asset. It was the purchase of a single 5-letter word followed by a .com. The buyer was Block.one, a blockchain company with ambitious plans to launch a new social media platform centered on free speech and digital identity. For them, securing this pristine, powerful domain was the crucial first step in building their brand, a foundational investment they believed was worth every penny of that 7-figure sum. To understand why a simple web address commands such an astronomical price, you have to think of the internet not as a nebulous cloud, but as the world's largest, most crowded city. In this city, a domain name is your physical address, and just like in the real world, some addresses are infinitely more valuable than others. The most coveted properties are the premium, one-word .com's words that are short, common, easy to spell, and instantly memorable. Think of names like insurance.com, cars.com, or vacationrentals.com. These aren't just URLs, they are digital landmarks. Owning one conveys immediate legitimacy, trust, and authority. It tells users that you are a major player before they even click through to your site. In a landscape where countless businesses are vying for attention, a premium domain acts like a massive billboard on the internet's busiest highway, guaranteeing traffic and brand recognition that a complex or quirky name could never achieve. The market for these digital properties is a high-stakes, shadowy world of brokers, private auctions, and fiercely guarded negotiations. It's a true example of speculative investment, where investors, often called domainers, buy up valuable domains and hold them for years, sometimes decades, waiting for the perfect buyer to come along. The sale of voice.com was a landmark moment in this ecosystem, but it's far from alone. The record for the most expensive domain sale is believed to be voice.com's linguistic cousin, voice.com, which sold for a mind-boggling $30 million in 2010. Other massive sales include insurance.com for $35.6 million, vacationrentals.com for $35 million, and privatejet.com for $30.18 million. These prices aren't arbitrary, they are carefully calculated based on the commercial potential of the word itself. A domain like insurance is worth more than plumbing because the industry it represents is worth trillions of dollars. The right name can be the key to unlocking that market. For Block.one, the $1.5 million price tag for voice.com was a strategic bargain. They were entering the incredibly competitive social media arena, a space dominated by giants with household names. They needed a brand that was not only intuitive, hinting at their focus on speech and conversation, but also one that was globally accessible and impossible to forget. A name like Voice is a marketing department's dream. It requires no explanation, is spelled exactly how it sounds, and carries a powerful, positive connotation. For a company building a platform on blockchain technology, a concept that is still complex and intimidating to the average person, anchoring it to a simple, familiar word was a masterstroke of branding. It provided a bridge between the cutting edge and the commonplace. This purchase underscores a fundamental truth of the digital age. Your idea might be revolutionary, but without the right address, no one will ever find it. In the endless expanse of the internet, the simplest words hold the greatest power and, as a result, the highest price. From the multi-million-dollar world of virtual real estate, we turn now to something far more tangible and far more personal, proving that when it comes to celebrity, even the most intimate biological processes can be transformed into a valuable commodity. In 2006, the legendary actor William Shatner, best known as Captain Kirk from Star Trek, experienced a painful rite of passage for many. He passed a kidney stone. For most people, this would be a private medical event, something to be quickly forgotten. But Shatner, with his characteristic wit and showmanship, saw an opportunity for something far more entertaining. He decided to put his kidney stone up for auction on eBay, describing it with his trademark flair as a calculus of note and a tiny piece of the man himself. The bidding, as one might expect, was anything but predictable. The winner was the online casino GoldenPalace.com, which paid a staggering $25,000 for the tiny, calcified object. This purchase sits at the fascinating and slightly grotesque intersection of celebrity culture, gallows humor, and shrewd marketing. On the surface, it seems utterly absurd. A kidney stone is a medical waste product, a painful biological byproduct with zero inherent value. But the moment it exited the body of a cultural icon, it was instantly transformed. Its new worth was not mineralogical, but mythological. It became a relic, a physical symbol of a shared experience. Everyone understands pain. That connected a global audience to a specific famous person in a strangely intimate way. The casino, famous for its collection of bizarre and headline-grabbing artifacts, understood this perfectly. They weren't just buying a stone, they were purchasing a story, a piece of guaranteed publicity, and a uniquely memorable trophy for their collection. They even had it mounted in a pendant, a gesture that blurred the lines between medical specimen, holy relic, and high-fashion jewelry, creating perhaps the world's most unusual conversation piece. The allure of celebrity biological matter is a powerful and peculiar force. It taps into the same primitive mindset that once drove the market for saintly relics, the belief that a piece of a person's physical body contains a fragment of their essence, their power, or their fame. In a secular, modern world, our celebrities are our new saints and demigods, and owning something that was literally a part of them is the ultimate form of connection for a devoted fan or a curious collector. This market extends far beyond kidney stones. Over the years, auctions have featured locks of hair from presidents and rock stars, and even, as we've seen, a celebrity's chewed gum. Each item's value is dictated by a macabre calculus of fame, intimacy, and the sheer oddity of the object itself. Shatner's kidney stone is a perfect example because it combines the ridiculous with the revered. It's a story that makes you laugh, cringe, and marvel all at once. A testament to the idea that in the bizarre bazaar of modern fandom, absolutely nothing is off limits if it comes with a famous name attached. If you thought paying for a celebrity's kidney stone tested the limits of value, prepare for a purchase that completely erases the object altogether, leaving nothing but an idea for sale. In 2021, an artist named Tom Miller, who goes by the pseudonym Salvatore Garau, unveiled a work titled Io Sono, which translates to I Am. The piece was a sculpture, but it was unlike any other. It was, by all visual accounts, completely invisible. Garau did not present a clear block of glass or a finely crafted transparent resin shape. He presented an empty space. The artwork consisted of a precisely measured 5 by 5 foot area, cordoned off with stanchions containing absolutely nothing but air. Despite this, or perhaps because of it, the piece was sold at auction for a staggering €15,000, which at the time was roughly equivalent to $18,000. Later, another of his invisible sculptures, Buddha in Meditation, reportedly sold for an even more astonishing sum. This transaction forces us to confront the most fundamental questions about art and commerce. What are we actually buying when we purchase a piece of art? Are we paying for the physical materials, the marble, the paint, the bronze, or are we investing in the artist's concept, their labor, and the intellectual and emotional experience their work provides? Tom Miller's Invisible Sculpture argues vehemently for the latter. He isn't selling a crafted object, he's selling a curated idea, a specific set of instructions for perception. The buyer did not receive a crate with a sculpture inside. They received a certificate of authenticity and a set of detailed instructions on how to display the work. It must be exhibited in a private home in a 5 by 5 foot space, free of obstruction, and it must be treated with the utmost seriousness and respect. The value is generated entirely by the artist's intent and the viewer's willingness to engage with the concept. This purchase is a direct descendant of a long and storied tradition in the art world that seeks to challenge our definitions. In 1919, the artist Marcel Duchamp submitted a mass-produced porcelain urinal, turned on its back and signed R. Mutt to an exhibition titling it Fountain. It was rejected, but its legacy was to forever question whether art required technical skill or if it could simply be about choice and context. Decades later, in 1953, artist Robert Rauschenberg created what he called a race de Kooning drawing, a work that consisted of a drawing by the famous Willem de Kooning that Rauschenberg had painstakingly erased. The art was not in the creation, but in the destruction and the conceptual weight of that act. Yves Klein's 1958 exhibition, The Void, featured an entirely empty gallery, a pure, immaculate space that he insisted was charged with his artistic sensibility. Tom Miller's Invisible Sculpture sits firmly within this avant-garde lineage. It is a conceptual art piece in its purest, most extreme form, stripping away every possible physical attribute until all that remains is the idea itself. The public reaction to such a work is predictably polarized. To its detractors, it is the ultimate emperor's new clothes, a pretentious scam that makes a mockery of both art and the people who spend good money on it. They see it as proof that the art market has lost all connection to reality, a bubble where anything can be sold if framed with enough artistic jargon. For its supporters, however, it is a brilliant, thought-provoking gesture. They argue that all art is to some degree conceptual. The value of the Mona Lisa isn't in its wood panel and pigments, it's in the history, the genius of Da Vinci, and the cultural weight it has accumulated over centuries. An invisible sculpture simply removes the physical object to highlight that the true art exists in the mind of the creator and the viewer. It democratizes the experience. Anyone can have an invisible sculpture in their home. You just need to imagine it. The act of purchasing it is a declaration of belief in that concept, a financial and philosophical endorsement of the idea that art is not what you see, but what you think and feel. In the end, the sale of nothing for $18,000 is a powerful testament to the fact that in the modern marketplace, the most valuable commodity isn't always something you can hold in your hand. Sometimes it's something you can only hold in your mind. But if an invisible sculpture asks us to find meaning in empty space, our next purchase presents us with a box that proudly, defiantly, contains absolutely nothing at all. We've entered the realm of high-concept satire, where the product isn't just absent, its absence is the entire point. The trend of selling literal nothingness took a hilarious leap forward with the story of a man named Nick, who in 2015 decided to list a product on Amazon that was the very essence of minimalism. It was titled, quite simply, Nothing. The product description was a masterpiece of deadpan marketing, boasting features like invisible design, lightweight and easy to carry, and perhaps most honestly, does not include any instructions because there is nothing to assemble. The listing featured a single, pristine white image, a visual representation of the void you were about to purchase, and the price for this revolutionary non-product. A cool $10. It was a joke, a piece of performance art aimed squarely at the sometimes absurd nature of online marketplaces. But then, something incredible happened. People started buying it, not in droves but consistently. Nick was actually making sales. The joke had somehow become a viable, if niche, business venture. This phenomenon isn't an isolated incident. It's part of a long and storied tradition of selling the intangible, a tradition that stretches back to the pet rock but pushes the concept to its absolute logical extreme. Entrepreneurs and satirists have sold deeds to 1 square-inch plots of land, jars of authentic British fog, and even the unclaimed pixels on a website. Each of these sales operates on a similar principle. The value is not in the physical object, but in the story, the humor, and the cleverness of the transaction itself. Purchasing nothing is a meta-commentary on consumerism. It's a person's way of financially endorsing a joke, of buying a ticket to participate in a shared cultural moment that winks at the very act of buying. The $10 price tag is cheap enough to be an impulse buy for a laugh, but just expensive enough to make the gesture feel significant. The buyer receives a cardboard box in the mail and upon opening it finds their expectations perfectly met. They have participated in a transaction that is 100% truthful. They paid money and received exactly what was advertised. In a world of inflated claims and marketing hyperbole, that kind of honesty is oddly refreshing. The brilliance of selling nothing lies in its perfect inversion of every standard rule of commerce. Typically, businesses spend immense resources on research and development, manufacturing, quality control, and packaging to create a product that provides value. Here, all of that is eliminated. The research and development was a single clever idea. The manufacturing cost is zero. The packaging is the cheapest box available. The quality control is impeccable because every unit is identical in its perfect emptiness. The entire enterprise is a critique of value itself, asking us to consider why we assign worth to certain things and not to others. It holds up a mirror to the consumer and asks, "Why did you buy this?" The answer is never about utility. It's about the desire to be in on the joke, to own a conversation piece, or to make a philosophical statement about the nature of ownership. This purchase proves that in the modern economy, the most valuable thing you can sometimes sell is a clever idea wrapped in a cardboard box, a perfect, self-aware parody of the very system that allows it to be sold. Moving from the abstract concept of an invisible sculpture to something jarringly physical and deeply personal, we arrive at what might be the most viscerally unsettling item on our list. Welcome to the strange and specific underworld of reality television memorabilia, a market where the definition of a collectible is stretched to its absolute breaking point. This isn't about autographed photos or worn t-shirts. This is about a trade in items so intimate that their sale feels like a profound violation of privacy. And perhaps no example is more shocking than the confirmed sale of a used diaper from a child of a reality TV star. While specific sales are often shrouded in secrecy due to their controversial nature, numerous reports and discussions within fan communities confirm that such transactions have occurred, with prices rumored to reach into the hundreds of dollars for items connected to the most famous families. To understand how this could happen, you have to first understand the unique parasocial ecosystem that reality television creates. Unlike movie stars or musicians who perform a role, reality stars sell a curated version of their actual lives. Viewers are invited into their homes, their relationships, and their most personal dramas for years on end. This creates an illusion of intimacy and familiarity that is far more powerful than traditional celebrity worship. Fans don't just admire these people, they feel like they know them. They've watched their children grow up from infancy, creating a warped sense of connection and ownership over their lives. For a certain segment of extremely devoted and often troubled fans, this illusion blossoms into an obsessive desire to possess a tangible piece of that life, to make the one-sided relationship feel real. A used, disposable item from a child becomes the ultimate trophy in this distorted dynamic. It's not just something they touched, It's something that was a part of their most private bodily functions. In the mind of the collector, it represents the ultimate access, a relic of pure, unfiltered authenticity in a world of staged storylines. The ethical and legal implications of this trade are enormous and deeply troubling. The individuals at the center of these transactions are children, unable to consent to their most private moments being commodified and sold to strangers. This raises immediate questions about exploitation and the right to privacy, even for those born into the public eye. While parents might be the ones profiting from the sale, either directly or through a third party like a nanny or staff member, the child is the one whose dignity is ultimately being auctioned off. This market exists in a legal gray area, often facilitated through private forums, encrypted messaging, and discreet auctions where the true nature of the item is hinted at rather than explicitly stated. The driving force is a fan culture that has crossed the line from admiration into something far more pathological. It's a culture that values proximity to fame above all else, including basic decency and respect for a child's well-being. The purchase of such an item isn't an act of fandom. It's an act of profound boundary violation, a statement that no aspect of a celebrity's life is off-limits if the price is right. It stands as one of the darkest and most illogical corners of American consumerism, a place where the desire for connection has curdled into something unsettling and exploitative, proving that when it comes to the bizarre things people will buy, there is sometimes no bottom. But for those whose desires can't be contained by a map's ordinary lines, our next purchase offers something far more poetic, a chance to own a piece of geography that wears its symbolism on its sleeve, or rather its shoreline. Nestled in the pristine wilderness of New York's Adirondack Park lies a small, private island with a shape so perfect, so instantly recognizable, that it feels less like a random act of geology and more like a deliberate gift from nature. From above, the 40-acre landmass is unmistakable, a near-perfect rendering of a human heart, complete with a ventricled top and a softly pointed bottom. This is Heart Island, and its unique cartographic charm made it the target of one of the most whimsically romantic real estate acquisitions in recent memory, selling for a multi-million-dollar sum that valued its shape far above its square footage. The appeal of such a purchase operates on several levels, blending geography with profound emotional resonance. On a purely practical basis, owning any private island is the ultimate fantasy of seclusion and control. It represents a fortress of solitude, a personal kingdom utterly removed from the hustle of the mainland. But Heart Island transforms that common fantasy into something infinitely more specific and meaningful. For the right buyer, this wasn't just an island, it was the ultimate romantic gesture, a grand, permanent valentine etched into the landscape itself. Imagine proposing marriage on the very tip of the heart's bottom point, or exchanging vows at its center. The island provides a built-in, breathtaking theme for a wedding venue or a private retreat that speaks the universal language of love without saying a word. Its value is inherent in its iconography, offering a story that is instantly understandable and endlessly captivating. This acquisition also taps into a long-standing human fascination with topographical pareidolia, the tendency to see familiar shapes in the natural world. We are drawn to maps that look like faces, mountain ranges that resemble sleeping giants, and clouds that form animal shapes. There's a deep-seated comfort and delight in finding order and recognizable form in nature's chaos. Heart Island is the ultimate example of this phenomenon, a shape so pure it feels intentional. Owning it is like owning a natural wonder, a tourist attraction that exists solely for you and your guests. It's a conversation piece that requires no explanation, a testament to the idea that the most valuable properties aren't just about location or size, but about the unique narrative they offer. The multi-million-dollar price tag wasn't just for the land and its timber. It was for the perfect story, a beautiful, natural coincidence waiting for its next chapter to be written by someone who saw not just an island but a symbol. Yet if a heart-shaped island represents the ultimate romantic purchase in the physical world, our next acquisition shatters the very concept of property ownership entirely, proving that in the 21st century, the most valuable real estate might not be made of dirt and trees, but of pure digital code. In 2010, an entrepreneur and gamer known online as Defy made a purchase that left the entire world of both finance and gaming utterly stunned. He paid a staggering $300,000 not for a mansion or a yacht, but for a virtual space station. The transaction didn't happen in a corporate boardroom or on a luxury real estate platform. It took place inside the massively multiplayer online game Entropia universe. This wasn't just an in-game item. It was a full-scale, player-owned virtual business called Collectibles, a bustling social hub and economic engine within the game's sci-fi universe. And the price tag firmly secured its place in the Guinness World Records as the most expensive virtual object ever sold at the time. To understand why anyone would invest such an enormous sum of real money into a digital asset, you have to first grasp the revolutionary idea of a real cash economy, or RCE model. Unlike most games where you spend real money to buy fictional currency that's trapped inside the game's ecosystem, Entropia Universe uses a fixed exchange rate where 10 Project Entropia dollars, or PD, always equals 1 genuine US dollar. This isn't a vague promise, it's the foundational principle of the entire game. Every virtual item, from a simple mining tool to a plot of land, has a real-world monetary value. Players can, and regularly do, deposit real cash and withdraw real cash from the game's banking system. This transforms the entire experience from a mere pastime into a potential profession. Players aren't just playing, they are working as virtual miners, hunters, and entrepreneurs, risking real money to generate real profit. In this context, Defy's purchase starts to make a bizarre kind of sense. He wasn't buying a pixelated toy, he was acquiring a revenue-generating business. Collectibles functioned much like a real-world entertainment complex. As the owner, Defy controlled the space station's core operations. He could charge other players fees for docking their virtual ships, taking a percentage of all the commercial transactions that occurred within its walls, and even hosting paid events. The station attracted a large, consistent player base, and that traffic directly translated into a steady stream of real-world income. His investment was a high-stakes calculation, a belief that the virtual business would generate enough revenue to provide a return on his investment, just like buying a strip mall or a restaurant in the physical world. For a time, it was reportedly bringing in a 5-figure annual income, validating his gamble and proving that a virtual economy could support serious financial ventures. This purchase was a landmark moment that announced the arrival of digital assets as a legitimate, if unconventional, asset class. It forced economists and investors to take notice of a burgeoning market where value is derived from code, community, and connectivity rather than physical scarcity. The concept of virtual real estate has only exploded since then, most notably with the recent craze around NFTs and metaverse platforms like Decentraland and The Sandbox, where parcels of digital land have sold for millions of dollars. These platforms argue that as our lives become increasingly digital, the social and commercial value of prime virtual locations will only appreciate. Owning a plot next to a virtual Gucci store or a digital concert venue could be the modern equivalent of buying real estate on Fifth Avenue in the 1920s. The psychology behind these investments is complex. For some, it's a pure financial speculation, a bet on the future growth of a specific digital platform. For others, it's about status and identity within an online community. Owning a prestigious virtual property confers a level of fame and influence, and for many, it's about the freedom to create and control a space entirely of their own design, unbounded by the physical laws and exorbitant costs of the real world. Defy's $300,000 space station stands as a brave, or perhaps foolhardy, beacon at the frontier of this new economic reality. It challenges every traditional notion of value, asking us to consider a future where our digital footprints and possessions might be just as meaningful and just as valuable as our physical ones. But for those whose aspirations for unique real estate extend beyond the symbolic shores of an island and into the literal depths of the ocean, our next purchase represents the ultimate expression of vehicular ambition. Imagine bypassing the luxury car market entirely and going straight for a vehicle that doesn't just turn heads on the highway, but disappears beneath the waves, leaving no trace but bubbles. This is the story of the private submarine, a purchase that moves beyond mere extravagance and into the realm of sovereign territory. While specific tales are often shrouded in the murky waters of privacy, well-documented instances exist, such as the Russian Kilo-class submarine reportedly purchased by a billionaire and converted into a private yacht. The acquisition of a decommissioned military vessel like this is a multi-phase odyssey that begins with a purchase price that can range from a few $100,000 to several $1 million, a relative bargain for a piece of naval history. But that initial fee is merely the cover charge for a symphony of staggering expenses. The real journey and the true cost begins with restoration. A decommissioned sub is a ghost of its former self, stripped of its sensitive military hardware and often left to the elements. The new owner isn't just buying a boat, they're acquiring a massive steel-hulled project. The process of making it seaworthy, or rather, dive-worthy, for civilian use is a monumental engineering challenge. This involves painstakingly removing any remaining toxic materials like asbestos or lead paint, a hazardous and expensive endeavor. Then comes the complete overhaul of the interior. Out go the cramped bunk beds and military Spartan living quarters, and in comes the world of luxury. We're talking about installing state-of-the-art climate control systems for comfort, premium sound systems for entertainment, and opulent furnishings that would be more at home in a penthouse suite than a naval vessel. The intricate life support systems, which keep the air breathable and the pressure stable, must be meticulously refurbished or entirely replaced to meet modern safety standards, a process requiring teams of specialized engineers and a budget that can easily soar into the tens of millions of dollars. This transformation from a weapon of war to a palace of leisure is arguably one of the most complex and costly personal renovation projects on Earth. Yet, even after the last piece of polished mahogany is installed, the financial drain is perpetual. Maintenance on a submarine is a relentless and exorbitant necessity. The hull requires constant inspection and anti-corrosion treatment to prevent a catastrophic failure under the immense pressure of the deep. The complex ballast systems, electric engines, and navigation electronics demand a full-time, highly specialized crew of pilots and engineers whose salaries alone constitute a significant annual outlay. Docking fees for a vessel of this size and uniqueness are astronomical, as very few marinas in the world are equipped to handle it. And then there's the simple cost of fuel. Moving thousands of tons of steel through the water is profoundly inefficient, making every nautical mile a pricey venture. This leads to the ultimate philosophical question that hangs over the entire enterprise. What does one actually do with a personal submarine? The practical applications are, to be charitable, limited. It cannot be used for a spontaneous weekend getaway. Every dive requires extensive planning and a certified crew. It's useless for running errands or impressing guests at a local dock, as its true purpose is hidden beneath the surface. Its value is almost entirely experiential. For the owner, the appeal is the achievement of ultimate privacy and exploration. It offers access to a world seen by fewer people than have been to space, providing a front-row seat to unexplored underwater canyons, vibrant coral reefs, and historic shipwrecks, all from the comfort of a pressurized lounge. It is the final word in exclusive travel, a vehicle that doesn't just take you to a remote location but to an entirely different element. It is a statement of unparalleled technological conquest and personal freedom, a declaration that the last great frontier on Earth is not beyond reach for those with the vision, and most importantly, the virtually unlimited resources to make it their personal playground. This purchase defies logic not because it serves no purpose, but because its purpose is the purest form of luxury, the conquest of impossibility itself. This peculiar financial maneuver takes us from the depths of the ocean to the heart of a struggling American community, where the very idea of debt was turned into a speculative asset. In the wake of the 2008 financial crisis, the small town of Moffat, Oklahoma, found itself in a dire situation familiar to many municipalities across the country. With a population of just over 100 people and a budget stretched to its limits, the town had fallen behind on its bills, accruing a debt of just over $71,000 to the neighboring city of Muldrow for police and fire protection services. For years, this debt sat on the books, an unresolved burden for a town with minimal resources. Then, in 2013, the city of Muldrow made a pragmatic, if unusual, decision. Rather than continue to chase a debt it likely believed would never be paid in full, it sold the delinquent account for pennies on the dollar. The buyer was an out-of-state investment firm, which paid a mere $1,750 for the right to collect the entire $71,000 sum from Moffat. On the surface, this transaction follows a standard practice in the world of finance. Companies frequently sell off bad debt or delinquent accounts to third-party collection agencies for a fraction of the original value. The new owner then assumes the risk and the effort of collection, hoping to turn a profit by securing more than they paid. However, this model is almost exclusively applied to individual consumer debt, like unpaid credit card bills or medical expenses. Applying it to a municipality is a profoundly different and legally murky endeavor. A town is not a person, it is a government entity, a sovereign body with taxing authority and a responsibility to its citizens. The investor, in this case, wasn't just trying to collect from a private entity. They were effectively attempting to bill the government itself, turning public obligation into a private revenue stream. The firm moved quickly, sending official notices to the town clerk of Moffat demanding immediate payment of the full $71,000, plus interest and their own collection fees. For the residents and officials of the tiny town, this was more than just a bill, it was an existential threat. The sum was astronomically larger than their entire annual operating budget, which hovered around a mere $8,000 a year. Paying it would have been mathematically impossible without dissolving the town entirely. The move sparked immediate outrage and bewilderment. How could a private company from another state believe it had the authority to collect a debt from a town government? And what legal mechanisms could it possibly use to enforce such a demand? The situation highlighted a massive gray area in financial law and raised alarming ethical questions about the commodification of public hardship. The core of the issue lies in the fundamental difference between a municipal debt and a consumer debt. Towns have sovereign immunity, a legal doctrine that protects government entities from being sued without their consent. A credit card company can take an individual to court to garnish wages, but a private firm can't simply seize a town's fire truck or foreclose on its town hall. The investor's attempt to collect was in many ways a bluff, a test case to see if a small, rural community without resources for a legal fight would simply capitulate. It was a strategy that relied on intimidation and the hope that the town's leaders wouldn't understand their own legal protections. This tactic, while potentially profitable in the world of consumer collections, takes on a deeply predatory tone when applied to an entire community, profiting directly from its financial distress and lack of legal expertise. The story of Moffat's debt became a national news item, a bizarre David and Goliath tale that captured the absurdity of the situation. It forced a conversation about the limits of financial speculation and the ethics of targeting public entities. While the eventual resolution of the debt is not widely publicized, the case serves as a stark warning and a powerful symbol. It illustrates how the mechanisms of high finance can trickle down to the most local of levels, creating situations where the well-being of a community becomes a line item on a distant investor's spreadsheet. This purchase defied logic not because it was inherently illegal, but because it applied the cold, impersonal logic of debt collection to the warm, complex reality of a community, attempting to profit from the very essence of civic struggle. Yet if the purchase of Moffat's debt represents a cold commodification of civic struggle, our next acquisition floats into a far more ethereal and poetic market, proving that even the very air we breathe can be bottled, branded, and sold. Welcome to the surprisingly competitive world of niche entrepreneurs who have turned a fundamental element of life into a luxury souvenir. Companies like Vitality Air in Canada or Ether in England have built entire businesses around capturing and selling jars of atmosphere from famously pristine or iconic locations. Imagine purchasing a small, elegantly designed canister labeled Air from the Scottish Highlands, fresh alpine breeze from the Swiss Alps, or even the crisp, thin air from the summit of a mountain. The concept is a masterpiece of modern marketing, selling nothing less than the experience of a place in its most essential, invisible form. For around $20 to $50, you can own a breath of air from the Grand Canyon, a place known for its breathtaking vistas, now literally condensed into a product you can hold in your hand. The appeal of this bizarre purchase is a fascinating mix of symbolism, humor, and a deep, almost primal yearning for connection. On one level, it functions as the ultimate inside joke, a clever and ironic gift for the person who has everything. What do you buy for someone who can travel anywhere, the air from a place they haven't visited yet? It's a conversation starter unlike any other, a testament to the sheer creativity of consumer capitalism. But on a much deeper level, it taps into a powerful human desire to possess a tangible piece of a memory or a dream. For someone who had a life-changing trip to the Red Rocks of Sedona, a vial of air from that location is more than a gag, it's a sacred relic. Opening the canister for a brief moment becomes a form of sensory time travel, a way to momentarily transport themselves back to that specific place and feeling. In a world that is increasingly urbanized and disconnected from nature, these products sell the idea of purity and escape. They offer a whiff of an idealized, unspoiled world, a literal breath of fresh air from a place perceived as cleaner, simpler, and more authentic than the buyer's daily environment. This market reached its ironic peak with a specific, high-value twist that perfectly encapsulates its paradoxical nature. While air from pristine natural locales is popular, some entrepreneurs identified an even more bizarre niche, selling air from notoriously polluted or hyper-urban environments. The most famous example is the sale of bottled air from Times Square in New York City. A company offered canisters of what they called the essence of New York, capturing the very atmosphere of the crowded, bustling, and famously not fresh crossroads of the world. This particular product was a stroke of genius because it completely inverted the sales pitch. It wasn't selling purity. It was selling energy, chaos, and the vibrant, gritty soul of the city that never sleeps. A specific, limited edition run of this urban air, packaged in premium glass containers with custom labels, reportedly sold for hundreds of dollars per unit to collectors and nostalgic New Yorkers living abroad. The desire to own a piece of the Times Square atmosphere is perhaps the purest expression of this market's driving force. The buyer isn't seeking a clean alpine breeze, they are purchasing a concentrated dose of memory and identity. For someone who grew up in the city or had a formative experience there, that air filled with the imagined scent of pretzel carts, taxi exhaust, and bustling humanity represents home. It's a sensory anchor to a specific point in space and time, proving that the value of a place isn't always in its beauty, but in its meaning. But while some purchases bottle a memory or buy a digital kingdom, others offer a far more public form of creative control, a fleeting chance to play a direct role in the grand spectacle of professional sports. For most fans, supporting their favorite team means buying a ticket or a jersey. For one particularly dedicated individual, it meant purchasing the right to rewrite a small piece of sports history, if only for 24 hours. Minor League Baseball, known for its quirky, family-friendly atmosphere and inventive promotions, is the perfect breeding ground for such a brilliantly absurd idea. Teams with names like the Hartford Yard Goats or the Rocket City Trash Pandas already embrace a sense of humor, so the concept of auctioning off the team's naming rights for a single game feels like a natural, if extreme, extension of that spirit. In a legendary stunt, one team offered this very opportunity to the highest bidder, and the winning fan paid a substantial sum, often reaching several $1,000s, for the ultimate bragging right, the power to officially rename the entire franchise for one glorious night. The results of this temporary rebranding were nothing short of spectacular, a masterclass in fan-driven absurdity that generated priceless publicity and unforgettable memories. The winning bidder didn't choose a simple or dignified name. They seized the opportunity to inject pure, unadulterated chaos into the official record books. Imagine the announcers, the scoreboard, and the players' own jerseys all bearing a name dreamed up in the depths of fandom. One famously renamed team became the Albuquerque Isotopes of Anarchy, a wonderfully nonsensical title that paid homage to a fictional team from The Simpsons while adding its own layer of delightful confusion. Another transformed into the Toledo Mud Hens, this time it's personal, turning the team's actual name into the opening line of a dramatic action movie sequel. The creativity on display was boundless, with names ranging from pop culture references and inside jokes to playful jabs at rival teams or even the team's own management. For the fan, the motivation behind such a purchase is a powerful mix of philanthropy, fandom, and flat-out fun. The money paid often goes directly to a charitable cause chosen by the team, allowing the bidder to make a significant contribution to their community while simultaneously achieving a unique form of local fame. They become a legend in the stands, the person who, for one night, made the impossible happen. It's the ultimate expression of support, a financial and creative investment that says, "I love this team so much, I'm going to temporarily rename them something utterly ridiculous." They get to see their idea come to life in the most tangible way possible, on official merchandise, in newspaper headlines, and echoing through the stadium's PR system. It's a participatory art project on a grand scale, with the entire ballpark as their canvas. For the minor league team itself, this stunt is a marketing home run that costs virtually nothing to execute. The administrative hassle of a temporary name change is minimal, but the rewards are enormous. The auction itself generates a wave of local news coverage, and the reveal of the new name creates a second, even larger wave of social media buzz and national sports headlines. It transforms a regular season game into a must-see event, driving up ticket sales and merchandise revenue as fans clamor to get a commemorative jersey or cap bearing the bizarre one-night-only branding. It demonstrates a brilliant understanding of modern marketing, where engagement and shareability are more valuable than traditional advertising. The team isn't just selling baseball, it's selling an experience, a story that fans can't wait to be a part of and share with their friends. This purchase, while seemingly a frivolous gag, perfectly illustrates the evolving relationship between sports teams and their communities. It proves that the most powerful marketing doesn't always come from a corporate boardroom. Sometimes it comes from giving a dedicated fan a microphone and the courage to say something wonderfully, illogically funny. But for those whose ambitions for unique property features extend beyond renaming a baseball team and into the realm of pure, unadulterated spectacle, Our next purchase represents the ultimate declaration of dominance, not over a league, but over the entire evolutionary timeline. Imagine bypassing the standard lawn gnome or garden flamingo and installing a permanent resident that announces to every neighbor, mail carrier, and passing motorist that you don't just own your home, you rule a lost world. This is the story of the private citizen who decided a life-sized, fully animatronic Tyrannosaurus Rex was not just a desire but a necessity. We're not talking about a flimsy Halloween decoration. This is a museum-quality replica, a multi-ton behemoth of steel, latex, and advanced hydraulics that can tower over 20 feet tall, stretch 40 feet from nose to tail, and produce a deafening, ground-shaking roar on command. The journey to acquire such a beast begins with a price tag that is every bit as colossal as the creature itself, with costs for a high-end custom model easily soaring past $200,000, a sum that could instead buy a very nice actual house in many parts of the country. The initial purchase from a specialty effects company is merely the first bite of a very large financial dinosaur. The real challenge and a significant portion of the expense lies in the logistics of delivery and installation. Transporting a multi-ton, intricately detailed structure requires a flatbed truck, professional rigging crews, and often police escorts for wide loads, turning a simple delivery into a minor civic event. Once on site, the installation is a feat of engineering. This is not an item you simply plug into a standard outdoor outlet. It requires a reinforced concrete foundation to support its immense weight and prevent it from tipping over in a storm. A dedicated, high-amperage electrical line must be run to power the massive motors and pneumatic systems that bring the creature to life. For the truly dedicated owner, integrating a sophisticated weatherproofing system and remote-controlled activation via a smartphone app adds another layer of complexity and cost. This transforms a whimsical purchase into a permanent home improvement project, one that likely requires consulting with structural engineers and electricians, and possibly even navigating local zoning laws and homeowner association covenants, which are almost certainly not written with prehistoric megafauna in mind. So what drives a person to make such an extraordinary investment? The motivations are as varied as the dinosaurs themselves. For some, it is the ultimate expression of passion for paleontology and natural history, a way to bring a lifelong fascination with these magnificent creatures into daily life. It's a statement piece that transcends art, a functional sculpture that interacts with its environment. For others, it is the pinnacle of prank culture, a long-term commitment to surrealism designed to baffle, amuse, and terrify in equal measure. The psychological impact on unsuspecting visitors or first-time delivery drivers is undoubtedly a feature, not a bug. There's also an element of pure, childlike wonder, the fulfillment of a dream to look out one's window and see a dinosaur in the flesh, or at least a stunning facsimile. It represents a triumph of imagination over conventional landscaping, a rejection of mundane suburban norms in favor of creating a personal Jurassic Park. The spectacle of it all generates a unique form of social currency. A property featuring such an installation instantly becomes a local landmark, a destination for curious sightseers, and a beloved photo opportunity for children. The owner becomes a minor local celebrity known as the person with the T-Rex. During holidays, the dinosaur can be dressed up, a Santa hat for Christmas, bunny ears for Easter, further cementing its role as a community icon. This purchase, while utterly illogical from a practical standpoint, makes perfect sense as a grand gesture of individuality and joy. It is a testament to the idea that our homes are not just shelters but canvases for our personalities, and for one particular individual, their personality was 20 feet tall, weighed several tons, and had a roar that could be heard from 2 blocks away. It is, without a doubt, the most charismatic and conversation-starting lawn ornament in human history. While most collectors seek out items that can be displayed on a shelf or tucked away in a climate-controlled vault, some set their sights on trophies of a far more monumental scale, acquiring pieces of history that are less displayed and more inhabited. This brings us to the story of a very specific and incredibly ambitious collector who didn't just want to own a piece of the space race. They wanted to own the very vessel that was meant to carry a hero home from the moon. Their prize, a vintage, non-functional astronaut capsule from the 1960s, specifically a moon escape pod, a breathtaking artifact from an era of unimaginable ambition and Cold War tension. This isn't a model or a replica. It's the real hardened steel and titanium husk of a craft designed for a single critical purpose: to lift off from the lunar surface and rendezvous with the command module orbiting above. The acquisition of such a piece is a plunge into the ultra-niche, high-stakes world of Cold War aerospace memorabilia, a market where the artifacts are few, the buyers are fiercely dedicated, and the stories are etched into every weld and scorch mark. The journey to purchase something of this magnitude is nothing like a typical eBay transaction. It often begins through a shadow network of private dealers, former aerospace employees, and government surplus auctions that occasionally release decommissioned equipment into the private sector. The price tag for a piece of engineering history of this caliber is a closely guarded secret, but it undoubtedly runs into the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of dollars. But the purchase price is merely the admission fee to a much more complex and costly relationship. The new owner isn't just buying an object, they are adopting a piece of national heritage, a multi-ton, garage-sized problem that comes with a unique set of logistical nightmares. The first and most immediate challenge is simply moving it. This isn't an item you can have shipped via standard freight. Transporting a capsule, even one stripped of its most sensitive instrumentation, requires specialized heavy rigging, custom-built cradles to prevent damage to its delicate aluminum skin, and permits for an oversized load that will turn every highway into an obstacle course. The journey from its previous resting place, perhaps a warehouse, a museum storage facility, or a decommissioned Air Force base, to its new home is an engineering project in itself. Then comes the question of what exactly to do with it once it arrives. This is where the fantasy of ownership collides with the stark reality of square footage. A lunar module ascent stage stands over 12 feet tall and is wider than most living rooms. It cannot be tucked into a corner. It demands a hangar, a vast warehouse, or a specially constructed outbuilding. The owner immediately becomes a curator and conservator, responsible for battling the relentless enemies of vintage aerospace: corrosion, dust, and entropy. They must maintain a stable, humidity-controlled environment to prevent the metals from fatiguing and the hundreds of switches and gauges on the control panels from degrading further. For the truly devoted, the goal is preservation, not just possession. This might involve tracking down original schematics, sourcing period-correct components from a network of other collectors, and even consulting with retired engineers who worked on the program decades ago, all in an effort to keep this sleeping giant from the past as intact as possible for future generations. Yet beyond the immense practical challenges lies the true allure of such an acquisition, the profound historical weight of the object itself. This capsule is more than just metal and wire. It is a symbol of a pivotal moment in human history. It represents the pinnacle of 1960s technology, a masterpiece of ingenuity built not with modern computers but with slide rules, raw courage, and the burning desire to beat the Soviet Union to the lunar surface. Owning it is like owning a piece of the Berlin Wall or a cannon from the Civil War. It is a direct tactile connection to a world-altering event. Every scuff on the exterior tells a story of testing and training. Every switch, even if now dormant, was once thrown by the hand of an astronaut practicing for the most daring voyage ever attempted. The collector becomes the guardian of that story, preserving not just a machine, but the tangible evidence of humanity's first tentative steps beyond our own planet. In a quiet hangar somewhere, this magnificent, silent sentinel from the age of Apollo stands as a monument to what we can achieve, a private moon mission forever grounded but forever inspiring. While the dream of a lunar module might represent the pinnacle of technological collecting, our next exploration into the strange marketplace of American desire brings us to a far more personal and eternal frontier, the final resting place. For most, choosing a burial plot is a somber, private affair, a decision guided by family tradition, religious custom, or simple proximity to loved ones. But for a distinct subset of buyers, a cemetery plot is more than a peaceful patch of earth. It's the ultimate piece of real estate, a chance to secure a permanent address in the neighborhood of fame. This practice involves specifically seeking out and purchasing grave sites adjacent to the tombs of cultural icons, movie stars, and musical legends, transforming the quiet solitude of a cemetery into a sought-after VIP section for eternity. The logic is as simple as it is surreal. If you can't achieve legendary status in life, perhaps you can lease a piece of its reflected glory in death. This trend reached its most famous and financially staggering expression in the hallowed grounds of Westwood Village Memorial Park in Los Angeles, a compact cemetery that serves as the final home for a constellation of Hollywood's brightest stars. It is here that Marilyn Monroe rests in a simple wall crypt, her grave a site of perpetual pilgrimage for fans from around the world. In 2009, the crypt directly above Marilyn's became available, a prime piece of posthumous property that ignited a fevered bidding war among those who dreamed of spending eternity literally looking down upon the iconic blonde bombshell. When the final bid was placed, the price was nothing short of breathtaking, $4.6 million for a single burial plot. This wasn't just a record, it was a declaration that the allure of proximity to fame knows no bounds, not even the ultimate bound of life itself. The psychology driving such an extravagant purchase is a complex tapestry of devotion, status anxiety, and a deep, almost primal yearning for symbolic immortality. For the buyer, securing this spot was about more than just a location. It was about crafting a permanent narrative. In death, they would forever be introduced as the person buried next to Marilyn Monroe. Their own identity, their life's work and story, would become intrinsically linked with a global symbol of beauty, tragedy, and stardom. It's a way to cheat obscurity, to ensure that long after their own name might be forgotten by the living, their gravesite will remain a point of interest, a footnote in the endless story of a much greater fame. This desire taps into a very human fear of being erased, of disappearing without a trace. By tethering their final remains to a monument of popular culture, the buyer achieves a form of everlasting relevance, guaranteeing a steady stream of visitors who may not know them, but who will inevitably pause, look at the nearby name, and wonder. Beyond personal legacy, this practice also speaks to the powerful nature of parasocial relationships, the one-sided connections fans form with celebrities they have never met. For decades, fans have felt they knew Marilyn Monroe through her films, her photographs, and the tragic mythology that surrounds her life. Spending eternity beside her can feel, in a strangely poetic way, like a reunion with a close friend or a beloved figure, a final consummation of a lifelong relationship that existed only in the fan's mind. The cemetery, in this context, ceases to be a place of mourning and becomes a site of community, a gathering place for fellow devotees where the buyer, by virtue of their prime location, becomes a permanent member of the inner circle. Yet, this bizarre real estate market also raises profound questions about the nature of reverence and the commodification of sacred space. Critics might argue that such purchases turn hallowed ground into a spectacle, a bizarre extension of the celebrity worship that dominates our culture. It prioritizes the desire for reflected fame over the traditional values of rest, peace, and family togetherness. The staggering price tag also highlights a stark disparity. where the value of a piece of earth is determined not by the person who will occupy it, but by the famous neighbor next door, creating a posthumous class system based entirely on wealth and ambition. The $4.6 million plot next to Marilyn isn't just a gravesite. It's the ultimate symbol of a society obsessed with fame, a final, desperate, and illogical investment in the hope that some star power might just rub off, even if it's far, far too late to enjoy it. But if a multi-million-dollar gravesite represents an investment in eternal proximity, our next purchase proves that immense value can also be found in the smallest of objects, ones that were never even meant to exist. In the precise, regulated world of the United States Mint, where billions of coins are produced with mechanical perfection every year, the rarest and most valuable items are not the ones that followed the rules, but the glorious few that broke them. We're talking about error coins, and among this fascinating category, few are as famous or as valuable as the 1955 double-die Lincoln penny. This particular coin is the stuff of numismatic legend, a seemingly ordinary 1-cent piece that can command prices upwards of $70,000 and sometimes far more for pristine specimens. So what transforms a penny, an object we regularly lose between couch cushions, into a 5-figure treasure? The answer lies in a microscopic flaw with monumental consequences. The story begins inside the mint itself, in the process of creating the dies, the hardened metal stamps that press the design onto a blank disc of metal. To create the master die, a hub bearing the coin's raised image is pressed into a steel die with tremendous force, transferring the design in mirror image. For the 1955 cent, this process went horribly wrong. Between the first impression and a second corrective strike, the hub shifted slightly. This misaligned second strike resulted in a die whose design elements, particularly the date and the inscriptions, "Liberty" and "In God We Trust," were dramatically and visibly doubled. This faulty die was then put into production, and for a short time, it stamped its distinctive, blurred mistake onto thousands of pennies before the error was caught and the die was destroyed. The coins that escaped into circulation are now some of the most sought-after errors in American numismatics. For a collector, the appeal of such a coin is a powerful mix of history, rarity, and sheer visual intrigue. Owning a 1955 double-die penny is like owning a tangible piece of a secret history, a permanent record of a fleeting moment of human or mechanical fallibility within an institution built on perfection. It's a snapshot of a mistake that slipped through countless quality control checks, a rebel that made it out into the world. Its value is a direct function of its scarcity. While estimates vary, numismatists believe only a few thousand of these error coins exist today, many of them well worn from years of circulation. Finding one in uncirculated, mint condition is the ultimate dream, a pristine artifact of that minting day era, and it commands the highest prices of all. The market for such coins is a world of intense scrutiny and specialized knowledge. Authenticity is everything, and a coin of this value would never be purchased without being certified and encapsulated in a hard plastic holder by a top-tier grading service like the Professional Coin Grading Service or the Numismatic Guarantee Company. These third-party experts verify the coin's authenticity, assess its condition on a 70-point scale, and seal it away, guaranteeing to the market that it is the genuine article. This process transforms the coin from a curious piece of metal into a secure, liquid asset. The collector paying $70,000 isn't just buying a penny. They are making a strategic investment in a piece of documented history that has consistently appreciated in value over decades. It's a hobby, a passion, and a portfolio, all contained within a single, tiny bronze canvas that proudly displays one of the most famous accidents ever to leave the mint. But perhaps no object better captures the ultimate expression of modern anxiety, mixed with extravagant luxury, than the custom-built, multi-million-dollar doomsday bunker. We've moved far beyond the simple concrete box stocked with canned goods that defined Cold War paranoia. Today's survivalist real estate is a sprawling underground condominium complex designed to weather any storm, be it nuclear, viral, or societal. One particularly eye-watering purchase involved a tech executive from Silicon Valley who reportedly invested over $20 million into a private subterranean fortress buried deep within a remote mountainside. This wasn't just a hole in the ground, it was a five-star hotel designed for the end of the world, a gilded cage waiting for a global catastrophe. The specs read like a sci-fi novel, multiple levels connected by reinforced concrete staircases, independent power generation from a combination of geothermal wells and massive solar arrays, and a sophisticated air filtration system capable of scrubbing out radiation, biological agents, and chemical threats. The residence included private suites, a communal dining and entertainment area, a fully equipped medical bay, and even an hydroponic farm to provide fresh vegetables long after the sun had been blotted out. It was the ultimate insurance policy, a guarantee of continuity for a chosen few when the world above ceased to function. The psychology behind such a monumental investment is a complex web of rational precaution and profound existential fear. On one hand, the purchaser could frame it as a logical, if extreme, extension of a risk management strategy. They are individuals with immense resources who have assessed the potential threats, pandemics, climate disasters, nuclear war, AI uprising, and decided that a guaranteed survival pod is a prudent allocation of their capital, no different than diversifying an investment portfolio. They are buying the one thing their wealth can't inherently guarantee: time. Time to wait out the chaos and emerge later to rebuild, or at least to ensure their family's safety in a worst-case scenario. This is the peace of mind that brokers in this bizarre industry often sell, a product far more valuable than the steel and concrete itself. It's the ability to watch news of a developing global crisis without the knot of primal fear in your stomach, because you know you have a meticulously planned exit strategy. For the ultra-wealthy, the bunker is the final and most absolute symbol of control, a way to impose order on the ultimate chaos of civilizational collapse. Yet, this drive also reveals a darker, more isolationist thread in the modern psyche, a stark departure from the communal, duck-and-cover drills of the past. The mid-20th century fallout shelter was often a communal project, a shared space for a neighborhood. Today's luxury bunkers are intensely private, designed for a single family or a small group of like-minded elites. They represent a loss of faith in collective society and its institutions, governments, militaries, emergency services. To handle a major disaster, the underlying message is a grim one. When things truly fall apart, you cannot rely on anyone but yourself and your own resources. It's a philosophy of hyper-individualism taken to its logical extreme, a fortified retreat not just from immediate danger, but from the burden of a collapsing humanity. The very design of these facilities, often hidden and secret, with blast doors designed to be sealed from the inside, speaks to a deep-seated fear not just of the disaster itself, but of the desperate survivors who might try to get in. This industry has blossomed into a full-blown niche market, with companies like Rising S Company and Vivos catering to a clientele that prefers its Armageddon with high thread, count sheets, and a wine cellar. The amenities offered are a surreal blend of martial preparedness and resort-style luxury. We're talking about bulletproof doors and decontamination showers situated next to home theaters and indoor swimming pools. One company even offers a bunker concierge service to fully stock your shelter with decades worth of gourmet freeze-dried meals, ensuring you can dine on lobster risotto while the world burns above. The existence of this market holds up a mirror to our times, reflecting a pervasive, low-grade anxiety about the future that has been amplified by a relentless 24-hour news cycle and the looming, unpredictable threats of the modern world. The multi-million-dollar bunker is the ultimate testament to this anxiety, a monument to the hope for survival and the fear of everything else, buried under 1,000 tons of rock and earth. But if the luxury bunker represents a multi-million-dollar investment in escaping reality, our next purchase proves that immense value can also be found in a joyful, deliberate return to childhood, specifically to the tiny, scaled-down world of die-cast cars. This story revolves around a small piece of painted metal and plastic, a toy that was never even meant to be sold. In 2011, a collector paid a staggering $150,000 for a single Hot Wheels car. This wasn't a solid gold model or a jewel-encrusted one-off. It was a vintage, one-of-a-kind prototype of the 1969 Volkswagen Beach Bomb, a vehicle celebrated not for its commercial success, but for its legendary status among a fervent global community of collectors. The Beach Bomb was initially designed as a whimsical surfer mobile, a VW bus with surfboards poking out the rear window, but the original prototype, known as the rear loader, had a fatal flaw. Its surfboards were mounted so wide on the sides that it couldn't fit through the loops of the classic orange Hot Wheels track, a major selling point for the entire brand. Mattel's designers went back to the drawing board, creating a second, production-ready version with the surfboards tucked inside through a rear hatch, the side loader we know today. The original rear loader prototypes were nearly all destroyed, but a handful survived, making them the holy grail for serious Hot Wheels enthusiasts. The one that sold for such an astronomical sum was in pristine, mint condition, a perfect time capsule from the very dawn of the brand. This transaction opens a window into the intense, high-stakes, and surprisingly mature world of toy collecting, a global market driven far more by nostalgia and passion than by any objective measure of the object's materials. For the uninitiated, spending six figures on a toy car seems incomprehensible. But for the collector, they aren't purchasing a child's plaything. They are acquiring a piece of art, a fragment of history, and a tangible connection to their own past. The value is generated by a perfect storm of factors: extreme rarity, historical significance, and condition. In the collecting world, mint in box is the ultimate prize, and for a prototype that was never commercially released, the condition is everything. This particular Beach Bomb wasn't just rare, it was a foundational artifact, a direct link to the creative process that built a billion-dollar brand. Owning it is like owning a storyboard from a classic Disney film or a test pressing of a famous Beatles album. It's a piece of the creative DNA. The market for vintage toys like this is a sophisticated ecosystem with its own rules, grading services, and auction houses. It's a realm where adults, often successful professionals, are chasing the ghosts of their childhoods, seeking to recapture a feeling of wonder and completion. For many, it starts with the desire to find a replacement for a beloved toy they lost, broke, or had to give away. That simple desire can evolve into a passionate pursuit, a hunt for the rarest variations, the promotional items, the items with the slightest paint deviation error. This nostalgia is a powerful economic engine, creating a market where a 1960s G.I. Joe with its original packaging can sell for tens of thousands of dollars, or an original 1977 Star Wars action figure still sealed on its card can be worth a fortune. The $150,000 Hot Wheels car is simply the peak of this pyramid, a symbol of how a shared cultural memory from youth can be crystallized into an object of immense financial value. It's a purchase that defies all logic of utility but makes perfect emotional sense, proving that the most powerful investments are often not in stocks or real estate but in happiness. But if a luxury bunker represents the ultimate investment in earthly survival and a vintage toy captures the pure joy of nostalgia, our next purchase launches us completely off the planet into a realm once reserved for the most elite government astronauts. We're talking about the purchase of a ticket not for a concert or a flight to Paris, but for a ride on a spaceship. In 2014, the company Virgin Galactic, founded by the flamboyant billionaire Sir Richard Branson, officially opened ticket sales for its pioneering suborbital spaceflight program. The price for a seat on this historic journey was set at $250,000, a sum that could buy a luxurious house in many parts of the country, but here was being exchanged for just a few minutes of an experience beyond compare. This wasn't a theoretical concept. Hundreds of people, from wealthy entrepreneurs to celebrities like Justin Bieber and Leonardo DiCaprio, put down deposits, signaling their readiness to be among the very first space tourists in human history. The logic behind such an extravagant purchase is a fascinating blend of pioneer spirit, unparalleled experience, and a powerful desire for a perspective that literally cannot be gained anywhere else on Earth. For these early adopters, the $250,000 price tag wasn't just a fee, it was an investment in being a part of history. They weren't just buying a ride, they were buying a permanent place in the narrative of human space exploration, securing their names alongside those of Yuri Gagarin and Neil Armstrong as individuals who dared to leave the planet, even for a brief moment. It's the ultimate bragging right, a story that would define their lives and legacies. The experience itself is almost impossible to quantify. After being carried to a high altitude by a unique mothership aircraft, Spaceship Two would detach, fire its rocket engine, and shoot straight up toward the blackness of space. Passengers would unbuckle and experience roughly 4 to 6 minutes of weightlessness, floating freely in the cabin as the spacecraft arcs over the top of its flight path. But the most profound part of the journey is the view. From an altitude of over 50 miles up, they would see the gentle, fragile curve of the Earth against the utter black void of space, a sight famously known as the overview effect. This perspective has been described by astronauts as a transformative, almost spiritual moment that forever alters one's understanding of our planet and humanity's place upon it. For these tourists, the cost wasn't for minutes of weightlessness, it was for a lifetime of seeing everything differently. Yet, this dream of accessible space travel has been fraught with devastating setbacks and complex ethical questions. In 2014, during a test flight, the first iteration of Spaceship Two, the VSS Enterprise, suffered a catastrophic in-flight breakup, resulting in the death of one pilot and the serious injury of another. This tragedy grounded the entire program for years, forcing a complete redesign of the spacecraft safety systems and forcing ticket holders to confront the very real, mortal risks involved in their dream. The incident highlighted the immense technical challenges of commercial spaceflight and sparked a serious debate about the morality of what some critics called joy rides for the ultra-rich, when the technology was still in its dangerous infancy. It raised questions about whether the pursuit of a billionaire's vision was worth the potential cost in human lives, and whether the resources poured into space tourism might be better directed toward solving problems here on Earth. Despite these challenges, the dream proved resilient. After years of testing, Virgin Galactic finally commenced its commercial flights in 2023, with Branson himself famously on the first fully crewed mission. The successful flights have begun to validate the business model, but the price of admission remains astronomically out of reach for all but the most affluent. This purchase, therefore, stands as a symbol of a new, burgeoning era, the privatization of space. It represents a fundamental shift from space exploration as a government-driven endeavor for national prestige to a commercial market driven by luxury and experience. The $250,000 ticket is more than a receipt. It's a landmark in human history, a down payment on a future where the stars are not just for astronauts, but for anyone with the courage and the immense wealth to reach for them. But for those whose desire for a tangible piece of history extends beyond national space programs and into the very heart of 20th century ideological conflict, our next acquisition offers a chance to own a fragment of a fallen world. The Berlin Wall was more than just a barrier of concrete and rebar. For 28 years, it was the most potent physical symbol of the Iron Curtain, a brutal dividing line between democracy and communism, freedom and oppression. Its fall in 1989 was one of the most jubilant and defining moments of the modern era, a testament to the human spirit's refusal to be caged. Almost immediately, that symbol of division became one of the world's most sought-after artifacts. A global market erupted for authentic pieces of the wall, turning a brutalist structure into a commodified monument, with everything from pebbles in plastic keychains to massive, multi-ton segments adorned with original graffiti finding eager buyers. Among these, one particular acquisition stands out for its sheer scale and symbolic audacity: the purchase of a massive 12-foot-tall, 3-panel section of the wall, complete with its iconic, colorful graffiti on the western face and its stark, barren concrete on the east. This wasn't a souvenir, it was a monument in its own right, and it sold for a price befitting its historical weight. The value of such a piece is generated by a powerful combination of provenance, artistry, and profound historical significance. Unlike a random chunk of concrete, a large, intact segment with verifiable documentation of its origin, specifically which section of the wall it came from, carries immense weight. The most desirable pieces are those from the western side, which became the world's longest canvas during the Cold War. Artists and protesters from around the globe used this surface to create powerful, defiant, and often beautiful works of political art. Owning a piece of this painted concrete means owning a direct link to that act of creative rebellion, a physical piece of the dialogue between two opposing worlds. The artwork itself tells a story, whether it's a simple message of hope or a complex mural, and that narrative becomes part of the object's DNA. The buyer of a major segment isn't just acquiring building materials, they are preserving a chapter of history, a unique fusion of art and protest frozen in time. The journey of a wall segment from a Berlin street to a private estate or museum is a complex logistical and ethical endeavor. In the immediate aftermath of the wall's fall, so-called wall woodpeckers descended with hammers and chisels, taking pieces for themselves. But the larger, more structurally intact sections were systematically dismantled by the German government, and many were eventually made available for sale or donation to cultural institutions worldwide. Today, acquiring a large, authenticated piece requires navigating a network of specialized historical artifact dealers, government agencies, and auction houses. The price for a significant, art-adorned panel can easily soar into the hundreds of thousands of dollars, a cost that covers not only its historical value but also the immense expense of crating, insuring, and shipping a multi-ton object across an ocean. For the collector or institution that makes such a purchase, the motivations are as heavy as the concrete itself. It is an act of profound historical preservation, a way to ensure that a symbol of such immense importance is not lost to time or relegated to a dusty corner of a warehouse. Installing a 12-foot segment on one's property or in a corporate headquarters is a powerful statement. It serves as a permanent, somber reminder of the consequences of division and the ultimate triumph of unity. It sparks conversation and education, forcing everyone who sees it to confront a pivotal moment in recent history. This purchase defies the logic of traditional collecting because its value cannot be measured by beauty or craftsmanship alone. Its worth is etched into its very essence in the spray paint applied by an anonymous protester, in the chisel marks from its dismantling, and in the sheer weight of the hope and fear it once embodied. To own a piece of the Berlin Wall is to become a custodian of memory, responsible for ensuring that the world never forgets what it felt like to be torn apart, or what it looked like when people finally came together to tear it down. While a chunk of the Berlin Wall represents a purchase heavy with global political significance, our next acquisition celebrates a very different kind of theater, the glorious, over-the-top spectacle of professional wrestling. We're moving from the history of nations to the history of sports entertainment, where the ultimate trophy isn't a piece of a broken barrier, but a shining, bedazzled symbol of fictional supremacy, a decommissioned championship belt. This isn't a replica you can buy at the merch stand for a few $100s. This is the real deal. We're talking about an official, physical title belt that was actually held aloft in the ring by a famous wrestler after a major pay-per-view event, now available for purchase by the deepest-pocketed superfans. The price for such a piece of history, it can easily soar into the tens of thousands of dollars, with some of the most iconic designs from wrestling's golden eras commanding truly staggering sums in private sales and auctions. To understand why a prop, essentially a piece of ornate leather and metal, could be worth more than a luxury car, you have to first appreciate what a championship belt represents within the universe of professional wrestling. In this unique world where athleticism and storytelling collide, the title belt is the ultimate MacGuffin. It's the physical embodiment of the entire narrative. It represents power, prestige, and the status of being the very best in the company. The dramatic, often year-long storylines are all built around the pursuit of this object, the desperate attempts to capture it, and the epic struggles to hold onto it. When a fan buys a decommissioned belt, they aren't just buying a collectible, they are purchasing a tangible piece of their favorite story. They are owning the artifact that was strapped around the waist of Stone Cold Steve Austin when he stunned Vince McMahon, or held by The Rock as he raised an eyebrow to millions. It's a direct connection to the most electrifying moments in the history of the sport. The market for these belts is a fascinating and secretive ecosystem, driven by a mix of intense nostalgia and the unique economics of wrestling memorabilia. Unlike trading cards or action figures, which are produced in mass quantities, authentic, used championship belts are incredibly rare. Wrestling organizations like WWE keep a tight grip on their active titles, and when a belt is eventually retired or replaced with a new design, the old ones don't often hit the open market. This scarcity is the primary driver of value. The belts that do become available usually come from a few specific channels: former wrestlers or executives who were gifted them upon retirement, private collectors looking to liquidate a prized possession, or, on very rare occasions, the companies themselves may consign a piece for a high-profile charity auction. Each belt's value is then carefully appraised based on a specific set of criteria. The era it's from is paramount. Belts from the boom periods of the 1980s and the Attitude Era of the late 90s are the most sought after. The specific wrestlers who held it and the major events it was defended at add layers of historical significance. A belt that headlined WrestleMania is infinitely more valuable than one defended on a weekly television show. Finally, the condition and authenticity are everything. Provenance is key. Documentation or a verifiable chain of ownership from the wrestler to the seller can double or triple the value, transforming it from a cool-looking object into a certified piece of sports entertainment history. For the collector who spends $50,000 on such an item, the motivation is a powerful cocktail of fandom, status, and investment. On one level, it is the absolute pinnacle of fan devotion. Hanging that belt in a custom-made display case in a man cave or home office is the ultimate flex, a statement that says, "My passion for this art form knows no bounds." It's a centerpiece that instantly commands respect and conversation from anyone who recognizes what it is. But beyond the bragging rights, there's also a shrewd financial calculation. The market for high-end wrestling memorabilia has shown consistent and impressive appreciation over the last decade. As the fans who grew up with these iconic moments enter their peak earning years, the demand for these rare artifacts only increases, making them a surprisingly solid alternative investment. Ultimately, the purchase of a decommissioned championship belt is a transaction that exists entirely outside of conventional logic. It's not a tool, it's not a necessity, and its materials are not inherently precious. Its immense value is generated solely by the stories attached to it, the cultural weight it carries, and the powerful, personal connection it forges between a fan and the larger-than-life mythology they love. It is, in every sense, the ultimate trophy. Perhaps it was only a matter of time before our exploration of bizarre purchases landed at a dinner table, but this wasn't just any meal. In the vibrant, competitive world of charity auctions, where experiences often command higher prices than physical items, one particular lot stood out for its peculiar specificity. The opportunity wasn't to dine with a movie star, a tech visionary, or a famous athlete. Instead, the winning bidder paid a jaw-dropping sum, reportedly well into 5 figures, for the simple privilege of sharing a meal with the somewhat anonymous owner of one of America's largest fortune cookie factories. On the surface, this seems like the most illogical purchase imaginable. Why would anyone part with such a significant amount of money for a conversation with a person whose entire business is built on mass-producing vague and often nonsensical predictions tucked inside a bland cookie? The answer lies not in the meal itself, but in the delicious layers of meaning, philanthropy, and cultural curiosity that this purchase represents. To dismiss this as a simple dinner is to misunderstand the unique allure of the fortune cookie itself. While we associate it firmly with the end of a Chinese meal, its origins are surprisingly murky and distinctly American, likely invented in early 20th century California. It is a food item that carries almost no culinary weight but an immense amount of cultural and psychological significance. It's a ritual, a moment of shared anticipation and light-hearted fun at the conclusion of a meal. The owner of a major factory isn't just a businessperson, they are the unofficial archivist and gatekeeper of this unique tradition. They oversee the writing of thousands of fortunes every day, shaping the tiny bits of wisdom, hope, and occasional bafflement that millions of people receive. For the winning bidder, this dinner was a chance to go behind the curtain, to sit down with the modern-day oracle and learn the secrets of the craft. What is the process for writing a fortune? Is there a committee that decides which ones are printed? Have any fortunes ever caused unexpected problems or sparked real-life events? This dinner was a key to a world of fascinating, quirky lore that very few people ever get to access. Of course, the philanthropic element cannot be overstated. The context of a charity auction completely reframes the value of any purchase. The bidder isn't just paying for the experience, they are making a charitable donation and receiving a unique experience as a thank you. The high price tag is first and foremost a generous contribution to a cause, and the eccentric nature of the lot likely drove the bidding higher than a more conventional dinner might have. It provided a compelling narrative for both the bidder and the charity. Instead of just writing a check, the donor gets an unforgettable story to tell. They become the person who paid a fortune to have dinner with the fortune cookie king, a brilliant anecdote that perfectly marries generosity with a wonderful sense of humor. This transforms the act of giving from a solemn duty into a joyful, memorable event, demonstrating that philanthropy can be both deeply meaningful and delightfully whimsical. Furthermore, this purchase speaks to a growing appreciation for the niche experts and unseen artisans who shape our daily experiences. In an age of mass production and faceless corporations, we are increasingly fascinated by the masters of specific, often overlooked crafts. We have celebrity chefs, famous distillers, and renowned watchmakers. Why not a fortune cookie mogul? This individual is a master of their very peculiar domain, a captain of industry in a world of crispy wafers and enigmatic slips of paper. For a collector of unique experiences or a connoisseur of American cultural oddities, this dinner was the ultimate acquisition. It wasn't about lavish luxury, it was about authentic access. It was a chance to celebrate a singular, quirky slice of American life and to honor the person who has dedicated their life to perfecting it. In the end, the logic of the purchase is beautifully circular. The winner paid a fortune for a dinner with the person who makes the cookies that contain fortunes. Sometimes the greatest value isn't in the object or the person, but in the wonderfully strange story that the transaction itself creates. Imagine holding a piece of paper that represents a dream so audacious it once convinced thousands of people to invest their life savings, yet today is completely financially worthless. This is the world of obsolete stock certificate collecting, a niche market where history and art converge on a single, beautifully engraved document. Our next purchase takes us far from the digital assets and luxury bunkers of the modern era and into the tangible past, where a collector paid over $2,000 for a single, ornate certificate from a long-vanished railroad company. This wasn't an investment in a future dividend. It was an investment in a story, a physical artifact from a bygone chapter of American ambition. The value of these certificates lies in a fascinating trifecta of historical significance, stunning artistry, and poignant nostalgia. Historically, each one is a snapshot of a specific moment in the economic evolution of the United States. A certificate from a 19th century railroad company, for instance, isn't just a piece of paper. It's a relic from the era that literally bound the nation together with steel tracks. It represents the immense, often reckless optimism of the Gilded Age, when fortunes were made and lost on the promise of connecting the continent. Similarly, a beautifully designed certificate from a dot-com bubble company like Pets.com or Webvan serves as a perfect, glossy tombstone for the exuberant folly of the late 1990s. These documents were printed at the peak of hubris, right before the entire venture evaporated, making them a sobering and collectible reminder that not every grand idea is a good one. They are financial fossils telling the story of economic booms and busts in a way that a textbook simply cannot. Beyond the history, these certificates are miniature works of art. In an age before digital graphics, companies commissioned master engravers to create certificates that were incredibly difficult to counterfeit and impressive to behold. They feature intricate borders, elaborate typography, and stunning allegorical images. It was common to see illustrations of steam trains charging into the future, robust figures representing industry and agriculture, or goddesses bestowing prosperity upon the shareholders. The level of detail is astounding, often featuring fine line work that rivals the currency of the time. This was a company's chance to sell its vision not just through numbers but through symbolism, projecting an image of stability, innovation, and inevitable success. For a modern collector, the appeal is similar to that of collecting vintage posters or currency. The certificate is a beautiful piece of graphic design that also happens to be a window into the past. The most sought-after pieces are those in mint condition with crisp paper and sharp, unfaded impressions, allowing the engraver's skill to shine through undimmed by time. The market for these items is a quiet but passionate corner of the collecting world, operating through specialized online auction sites, antique paper shows, and dedicated dealers. Prices can range from $20 for a common certificate to many thousands for a rare, historically important, or exceptionally beautiful example. The record-breaking sales often involve iconic companies that have a lasting place in the cultural memory, such as railroads that played a pivotal role in Western expansion or early automotive companies that flickered out but paved the way for giants like Ford and General Motors. The process of collecting is also a form of historical detective work. Serious collectors delight in researching the company behind the certificate, unraveling its story from incorporation to its eventual dissolution. They aren't just acquiring an object, they are adopting a piece of a narrative and becoming its curator. Ultimately, the purchase of an obsolete stock certificate is a profound act of preservation. It is a recognition that value is not always measured in dividends and market capitalization. Sometimes the greatest value lies in the paper trail of dreams themselves, the bold proposals, the wild optimism, and even the spectacular failures that collectively chart the course of progress. The collector who spends thousands on a worthless piece of paper is making a statement that these stories matter, that the art of a lost craft deserves admiration, and that the most interesting investments are often those that pay off in knowledge and beauty rather than cash. And finally, we arrive at what might be the ultimate symbol of decadent spending, a purchase that so perfectly marries the pinnacle of luxury with the absolute depths of mundanity that it feels less like a transaction and more like a philosophical statement. Behold the custom jewel-encrusted toilet, a fully functional bathroom fixture sheathed in precious metals and adorned with thousands of flawless gems. This isn't a metaphorical throne. It's a literal one, representing a level of lavish expenditure so extreme it circles back from absurdity into a kind of bizarre artistry. The commission of such an object begins not with a plumber, but with a team of master jewelers, metallurgists, and designers, collaborating to transform the most utilitarian object in the home into a blinding monument to opulence. We're talking about a foundation of 24-karat gold plating, providing a warm, luminous backdrop for a meticulous mosaic of hundreds, even thousands, of individually set diamonds, sapphires, rubies, and emeralds. The estimated cost for such a project is almost incomprehensible, easily soaring into the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and potentially much more depending on the quality and carat weight of the stones selected. This is a price tag that could fund a community center, purchase a sports car, or serve as a down payment on a mansion, all invested instead into the place you go to read the news on your phone. The psychology behind this purchase is a fascinating deep dive into the outer limits of consumption. On one level, it is the ultimate, undeniable flex, a declaration of wealth so profound that it can be applied to the most private and unglamorous aspects of daily life. It signals that every single moment of the owner's existence, no matter how base or biological, is touched by extraordinary luxury. There's a perverse brilliance to it. While a diamond-encrusted watch is seen by others at board meetings and a gold-plated car is admired on the street, this is an experience of wealth that is almost entirely for the self. It is a private joke and a personal reward on a monumental scale. The owner isn't just buying an object, they are purchasing an experience of surreal grandeur every single day, a constant, glittering reminder of their own financial power in the most unexpected of settings. It transforms a routine act into a ritual of extreme affluence. This toilet also stands as the final word in a long tradition of gilding everyday objects, but it pushes that concept to its logical and illogical extreme. History is filled with examples of the ultra-wealthy using precious materials on common items, gold silverware, jeweled goblets, platinum picture frames, but these were often objects used in social settings, designed to impress guests and display status. The jeweled toilet moves beyond that. It's a rejection of the very need for an audience. This is luxury for its own sake, completely divorced from any practical function or social signaling. It is, in a strange way, a purer form of indulgence because its primary purpose is to bring joy to one person alone. It celebrates the utter pointlessness of extravagance, making it perhaps the most honest luxury item ever created. Yet, beneath the sheer audacity, one can also detect a thread of provocative humor. Commissioning $1 million toilet is an act of profound satire, whether intentional or not. It holds a funhouse mirror up to the entire concept of value, mocking our societal obsession with precious materials by applying them to an object designed for waste. It's a Duchampian gesture on an astronomical budget, challenging us to question why we value what we value. Is a diamond any less beautiful or valuable when it's set next to a toilet plunger? Does the context truly diminish the stone, or does the stone tragically elevate the context? The jewel-encrusted toilet doesn't answer these questions. It simply, blindingly exists, forcing anyone who contemplates it to confront the bizarre and often arbitrary nature of worth. It is the apex of bizarre American purchases, a perfect, glittering paradox that is both a masterpiece of craftsmanship and a monument to the hilarious, bewildering, and boundless extremes of human desire. From a simple stone sold as a joke to a private island shaped like a heart, from a used piece of gum to an entire town, these purchases paint a vibrant and often bewildering portrait of the American marketplace. What connects a ghost in a jar, a $10,000 hamburger, and a multi-million-dollar plot of earth next to a movie star? It's more than just a shared strangeness. It's a testament to a unique national spirit, a powerful fusion of boundless capitalism, insatiable curiosity, and an almost primal desire to claim a piece of the extraordinary, no matter the cost or the logic required to justify it. This isn't merely consumerism, it's a form of self-expression, a way of participating in a story larger than oneself, whether that story is a cultural joke, a personal dream, or a historical moment. The American economic landscape provides the perfect stage for this theater of the bizarre. It's a system that not only allows for such audacious transactions but often celebrates them. The free market, with its minimal barriers and cultural encouragement of entrepreneurship, gives anyone with a clever idea, no matter how ridiculous, a platform to find an audience. The pet rock wasn't successful because people needed rocks. It was successful because Gary Dahl understood that people would pay for a moment of shared laughter and clever packaging. This environment fosters a specific kind of creativity, one that asks not, what do people need, but what could people want? The result is a marketplace where literally anything, from nothingness in a box to the air we breathe, can be assigned a value and put up for sale. Underpinning this commercial creativity is a deep-seated cultural curiosity. Americans are drawn to the novel, the unique, and the conversation starting. Owning a piece of Britney Spears gum or a haunted doll isn't just about possession. It's about acquiring a story, a tangible connection to a mystery or a fame that feels otherwise untouchable. It's a way to curate one's own identity through the objects one owns, declaring to the world, I am the kind of person who owns a life-sized animatronic T-Rex. These purchases are driven by a desire to break from the monotony of everyday life, to inject a dose of wonder, humor, or even fear into the mundane. They represent a collective yearning for experiences that defy the ordinary, proving that value is often measured not in utility, but in the depth of feeling an object can evoke. Ultimately, this incredible range of purchases, from the whimsical to the wildly extravagant, reveals something fundamental about the American relationship with ownership. It's never just about the object itself, it's about the idea it represents. The desire to own a piece of the Berlin Wall is a desire to hold history in your hands. The drive to buy a virtual space station is a bet on the future of digital reality. The purchase of a diamond-encrusted toilet is a statement about the absolute power of wealth to transform even the most basic human experience. Each bizarre purchase in its own way is an attempt to capture a fleeting piece of magic, to make a dream tangible, and to leave a mark on the world, however unconventional that mark may be. They are all, in the end, declarations of hope for a return to childhood, for a connection to the divine, for a secure future, or simply for a really, really good story to tell.